Before the ribs, I was sad. And now I'm happy. Happy. Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is Kansas City baby back ribs. Well, today we're cooking up some sweet and salty, smoky, saucy baby back ribs, just like you'd find at your favorite Kansas City barbecue joint. So let's jump right in. So what we're working with here are baby back ribs. So this rack comes from the top part of the pig up by the loin. You can imagine the spine's pretty close by as well. The bottom is where you get the spare ribs, so they kind of cut them off before you get to spare rib territory. These are a little bit leaner than the spare ribs because of where they come from on the pig. But they also tend to have a little bit more meat on top of them than the spare ribs do, which have a little bit more meat in between. Now you might also hear these referred to as simply back ribs or pork back ribs. But I've always grown up calling them baby back ribs. They're not called that because they come from baby pigs or anything. They just look smaller. And for that reason, people started calling them baby back ribs. So we've got some minor trimming to do. There's never a whole lot of trimming to do on the baby backs. This little flap that's just gonna burn up, we'll take that off. And then I like to take the membrane off the back side of the ribs as well. This membrane is just kind of a thin, papery membrane that you just end up chewing on in the end if you don't take it off. Although you can leave it on. In fact, you can check to see if it's already come off by scratching it. And if that fat comes up with it, that means that there's no membrane there, which means I don't have to peel the membrane off this. I'm searching for nothing here. One of the other minor bits of trimming that I do is if there's a bone that's exposed at the end, I'll usually go ahead and take that off. And I typically try to kind of do that at an angle so we don't lose very much of that meat from down there. Just a little bit of meat on top, but we've saved some from the edge. The other thing is you're gonna find these little bones in between the bones. Now, if you want to, you can get in here with a knife and dig each one of these out. It's gonna look kind of jagged. The other thing you can do, which is what we're gonna do today, is just cook them with them in there, and then you can pluck them out before you slice. Got one little bone at the other end that we're gonna cut out of the way. Just square that off a little bit. But beyond that, really not any trimming to do on here. So just gonna check for that membrane again on the next one. Nope, scratching up some fat, so that means it's already gone. We'll square off the ends here. Now, these ribs came to us from Creekstone Farms. This is a Duroc pork rib, so it's gonna look a little bit smaller to the eye. It's a little bit smaller than what you'd get out of commodity pork, but the actual quality of the pork is really nice. It cooks up really great, and you can even see through the end pieces that beautiful intramuscular marbling that we don't always associate necessarily with baby back ribs, as they are a bit leaner, but really great fat content as well. This last rib's just kind of poking out at the bottom, so we're going to take that off. Moving on to seasoning now, we're going to start with a little mustard binder. We're using the Big Rick's jalapeno honey mustard. I like the little bit of extra sweetness in here. It can kind of help with a little bit of caramelization on the surface. And in the end, we want these to be a sweet and salty rib. Give them a good rub down with the mustard. This slather adds a little bit of flavor, but also just acts as a great binder for your rub. Speaking of the rub, we are going to be using a Kansas City rub today, Yardbird by Plowboys. Now, I actually texted Todd Johns, the owner of Plowboys, when I decided we should do this video just to get some of his little tricks that maybe he hasn't been sharing yet. And he said I could share a few of them with you guys today. Now, one of them is just this rub, I would say. This is one of my favorite barbecue rubs of all time. And as far as Kansas City barbecue goes, it's a classic now. Now, he's got a really interesting take on how to cook these a little bit hotter than you might think. At 300, he says getting those bones hot inside actually helps to cook the rib from the inside out. Now, we're not going to quite go all the way up to 300 today, being that these are a little bit smaller rack of baby backs compared to commodity pork. So we're going to be cooking at about 275. Now I've given these about 3 to 5 minutes for this rub to really set up and attach. You can see how dark it is on the surface now, almost looks wet. That's what we're going for before we flip. That's how we know that the rub has attached to the meat. It's not gonna fall right off. I'm just gonna do the same thing on the meat side of the ribs now. So between the sugar and the rub, along with the honey mustard, we should get a nice bit of caramelization going on, helping to form that bark with the salt, which is the #1 ingredient in this. It's still a salt forward kind of rub. But all of that, along with that pretty red color from the Yardbird, a little bit of cherry smoke, we're gonna have a really beautiful color on these ribs. Just touching up the edges. Again, we want to let this sit for a little while, not too long, but you can see what it looks like, how it's dry on top. As soon as these look wet, they're good to go onto the smoker. You don't need to let them set for too long. In fact, at some point, you're just going to start curing it and turning it into ham. Now, after about 5 minutes, you can see the difference in color. You can see how wet it looks on the surface. These are ready to go onto the smoker. Today we're cooking on the Yoder Smoker's YS640S pellet grill. It's running at 275 degrees, as I mentioned earlier. I also alluded to some cherry wood. We're actually using a contest blend pellet today, so it's got some cherry, pecan, and oak in it. So these are gonna come up here on the second shelf where we can get some nice radiant heat around them. Plenty of room in between them to soak up some smoke. Our shorter racks can go the other direction over here. And the great thing about this cook is there's not much to do at this point but wait. So close it up and let the smoker do its magic. Well, the ribs have been smoking for about 3 hours now, and some of these smaller racks are looking really good. It's time to sauce them. So you can see we've got beautiful color and bark that's formed on the edges all around these smaller baby back ribs that started over here. We've rotated them around just to get kind of even browning. And if we pick these up, by the feel of it, you can see that they're just about done. I mean, we look at these bones, the bones have kind of separated from that meat. So the doneness is almost there. And these went really quick today, which is great. We're eating ribs sooner. That's one of the things that I love doing. One of the reasons that I love doing baby back ribs, or ribs in general, is just that they cook so much quicker than most big barbecue meats. So we're gonna hit each one of these with a bead of Sweet 180 by Plowboys. This is their sweet barbecue sauce that you would be eating on Plowboys ribs at their restaurants in Kansas City. So just gonna brush the sauce into the tops of the baby backs, and then we're gonna let it kind of tack up on here and close this lid back up. But we're getting really close to being done with these. Well, the ribs have been sauced for about 30 minutes now. You can get a really good look, just that beautiful red color, the way that sauce is tacked up on there. If we start to feel these, I mean, really nice and flexible, we're ready to pull these guys off. So these are gonna go into a hot box or a cooler just to rest for a while the other ribs finish up. Speaking of which, boy, those are looking really nice too. Beautiful bark. Starting to get some really nice flexibility in that smaller rack of the two there. That big guy is getting some flexibility as well. So we'll be saucing these pretty soon here. So this is just shy of 4 hours now. We're starting to see some really good movement in these last racks of ribs. You can see even on the top how this wants to crack just a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and get these painted with some sauce. Come back at them with the Sweet 180. Glaze them up. We'll let this sauce tack up for just a little bit and these will be ready to come off and rest as well. Another 30 minutes on the smoker, and these are ready to come off. Looking really nice and flexible, beautiful color, nice bit of bark. Let's get these resting so we can slice into them and give them a taste. Our last round of ribs is now rested for at least 45 minutes, which means all of those juices have had time to redistribute. Everything's kind of just setting up. It's gonna make it really nice and easy for us to slice into these. Let's get in here. Nice. That's a good slice. Try and take these apart without ruining that pretty glaze the way that's set up on the top side there. Sticky. For sure the easiest way to see where you're cutting in between these bones as they move a little bit is just to flip them over so the bone side's up. Kind of messes up your glaze on the other side, but it's not the end of the world. You can check out that bark that's formed on the bottom. No sauce on there, so it's pure barkiness. But top, really nicely glazed. It's sticky. Ooh, look at all that juice. Fatty. Let's check the bite through. That's done the way I like it. If you look at the bite through, pretty clean, but on top of that bone, just done enough that it kind of just pulls away from the bone. Got to appreciate, to me, what feels like a classic rib, because I grew up on these Kansas City style ribs. We've got just the right amount of balance as far as sweet and salt goes. It's not 100% savory, and I'm a savory boy typically, but I do not mind that little bit of sweetness on the top. Really nice. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoy the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.